Let's play! Whoa! Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. You all may call me Pharaoh, and welcome to what the hell was I trying to say? Welcome back to what should be the final bonus episode of Let's Play Raging Loop. Last time we went over the fourth bonus story, which was Boy and Girl versus In From Hell, and even though it was very largely comedic and talked about poop and horniness, it was still good revelations for both Mochi and Haru. But now we are going to go into the final bonus story, which is Sheep versus Stack of Reports. This is apparently a documentary. Interesting. One's dream is another's reality. An entity viewing everything from outside a story aims to recap the incident from another viewpoint and tie up loose ends. So this should hopefully be a really, really good one. I have high hopes for this, so let's go. Report. Writer, Yasumizu. Date, 8/21/2003. Summary. I somehow resolved it. The end. I wish I could write reports like that sometimes.
もう
夏休みの宿題は終わったかしら？
見りゃわかるだろっつーんすよ。こんなもん書くとか柄でもねえのに。
権利には義務が伴う。協会はメンバーに対してその原則の徹底遵守を求めるの。
わかってるよ。ジンクス的活動に関しては報告と連帯しての隠蔽だったか。だからって向き不向きが覆るわけでもねえってことっすよ。ああ、隕石とか落ちねえかな。
本当に夏休みのノリね。慣れれば大したことないわよ。
慣れるためにまずこれどうにかしねえといけねえっしょ。これどうにかするには慣れがいるっしょ。無理くせえ。
あなたがめんどくさがってるの。突き詰めれば元彼にコンタクト取るかどうかってことじゃないの？図星か。
いや、それもあるけど、やっぱ文とか報告とか書くのも読むのも苦手っすよ。
そうね。私が頑張って作った事前報告書もあまり読んでなかったみたいだしね。
すんません。
あなたを心配してるの。入ったばかりで随分の重に背負わされてるのはよく理解してるし。でも情報の優位性っていうのはこういうミッションの時には絶対に確保しとくべきなんだから。
そうっすね。反省してまーす。
はあ、ちょっとコーヒー入れてくるわ。その後ちょっと見てあげる。
いや、そんな悪いっすよ。
遠慮しないで。自助努力が推奨されるとはいえ、無理難題で苦しめるのはうちの本分じゃないんだから。あなたのお目付け役として必要な助けはするつもり。じゃ、待っててね。
So before I begin, can I just say that laptop is gargantuan? It might be like forced perspective or something, but compared to Mitsuji and that laptop, holy crap. And who knows? I mean, there could be laptops that are that large. I don't know. I'm not really a laptop guy anymore, so yeah, there's that. They mentioned like the church, so I guess that's the organization that she's part of, but let's see. After her blindingly white superior left, Mitsuji Misumine let out a deliberately loud sigh. Excuse me. She expected grumbling would make a difference in an organization like this, but it appeared to have no effect. In actuality, as a member of their active force, she had plenty of experience with recon and reports. It wasn't her lack of literary talent or her ex-boyfriend Haruaki Fusashi, or whatever his real name was, that was the problem. It was figuring out how to write the report while keeping her power hidden. Mitsuji Misumine was the sheep. Or rather, Misuji Musamine was a name she simply given to herself as a play on Hitsuji, or sheep. In reality, her true name was simply Sheep. As the name indicated, she lived in a very peculiar environment until recently. Though her current environment was pretty peculiar on its own, after all, normal people were completely unaware of the church. But the sheep's existence was heretical even to them. So she needed to hide her true nature even within the already concealed church. They had unnatural powers. Here, unnatural powers refer to things that would be generally considered superpowers or magic. Supernatural powers right out of the realm of fiction. Those powers, thought only to exist in fantasy, did in fact actually exist. In a sense, anyway. These superpowers assumed to exist in a certain sense were known by many different names. From the perspective of the church, they were called jinxes. The church claimed that jinxes were superpowers born of beings isolated from human socialization. It was hard to understand when written like this, so the church often explained using a cult and a rain man as an example. There was a man who seemingly brought rain to any event he participated in. This left an impression on that group, who began treating him as a genuine rainbringer. A cult showcased superpowers within itself. Until the cult was exposed from the outside, these superpowers were treated as the real deal. Even if there were rules to define common sense and accepted science, there were cases where those separated from human relations could adopt those rules. Therefore, jinxes were the superpowers that existed via this agreement to abandon common sense, also known as a contract. This didn't mean that jinxes were a mere game of make-believe. Rather, jinxes were a definitive phenomenon and threat to the ones who executed a contract. But as a result of their nature, jinxes could not be scientifically proven nor debunked. In the first place, it was inherent to jinxes that people who wanted to prove them themselves got repelled from human relations at the very earliest stages. That was why the church advocated for separating the events of the world of jinxes from normal society, resolving them and covering them up. This mindset was incompatible with the congregation, who called for harmony between jinxes and normal humans, and the parliament, who wished to rule peacefully using jinxes. That was why the academia, whose goal was to study what jinxes were and to discuss them, were the dominant faction. There were many passing pre-existing religious fundamentalist and destructive ideology groups that opposed the four. Jinx society was spread all across the globe, their numbers said to be in the tens, if not hundreds of thousands. And naturally, due to their nature of being isolated relationships, there were millions out there that remained undiscovered by Jinx society. This world did not adhere to common sense as well as people thought it did, an opinion shared by those who knew about jinxes. Jinxes could include any unusual ability as long as those who know about them acknowledge them. From magical abilities out of storybooks like breathing fire and shooting lightning to showing illusions and altering a reality, the possibilities were limitless. Generally, it was believed that the less a person adhered to common sense, the more absurd jinxes they could acknowledge, or be acknowledged by. Therefore, there was a trend of describing jinxes with a simple phrase, superpowers born from twisted personalities. When put that way, Mitsuchi believed that as long as others were as twisted as her, it wasn't strange for them to have those powers. It wasn't just her, it was them. Most of them had been forced to scatter, and she was sure the majority of them had been killed. She had been lucky. That, or clever. For she had managed to survive not by fighting, but by choosing to flee. Thus, she needed to keep giving her all. So she could survive. So she could prolong her fortune. The moment she reached out to her keyboard, she felt a pair of hands from beyond gently overlap her own. She thought her heart was going to stop. She hadn't felt that presence at all. White hands, long white sleeves. The superior of an ambiguous age she had just been speaking of. The woman's fingers moved, making Mitsuji type the following words like a puppet master. Summary. I, Mitsuji Misumine, a survivor of the Salvation Pasture Project, prevented a disaster of biblical proportions.
心配しないで。
A stifled voice caressed her neck.
気づいているのは多分私だけ。あるいは私のようにことを大きくするつもりのない子たちだけ。もちろんこんなものは提出しない。大丈夫。ただし私には全てを話してちょうだい。あなた
どこで気づいた？っていうか、守るとか笑わせやがる。てめえら教会は学会の殺処分を黙認しやがっただろうが、保護と隠蔽の大義はどこ行ったんだよ。
あなたを守るだけで精一杯だった。それだけ家畜のインパクトは大きいのよ。組織だっては守れないほどにね。
ああ、そうだろうな。しかしなおさら俺があんたらを信用できねえとは想像がつかねえか？
ええ、信用はしない方がいいわ。私だってあなたのことが大っぴらになるようなことになればかばいはしないから。さも知らなかったかのように羊を見つけたと言って追い立てる側に回るでしょうね。まあショックのあまり手が滑るとか何かを見落とすとかはするかもしれないけど。
それやこれや口に出していいのかよ。
上の監視手段は眠らせてきた。
何者なんだよ。
教会もそれなりに含まれんよ。そこで生き延びるためにはいろいろ知っておかないと。
そうまでしてくれる理由は？
家畜の能力の有用性、10年後を見越したパワーバランスの計画、あとはあなたに個人的に興味がある不足？
ああ、足りねえ。そんな理由でいいなら虐殺なんて起きなかったはずだ。
あなたは政治が分かってない。核兵器は加戦するから意味があるの。
Really quick. I find it very interesting that they're using the word cattle. Because the only other person's ever mentioned that, and who is still actually a huge mystery to this game, even now, is Miko. Because remember, like, near the end of the game, when Haruaki was, like, setting up everything, he saw Miko, fed her food, and she kept saying ba ba, and he's like, why do you say that, by the way? And all she said was cattle. So I really hope that in this extra story we find more information regarding Miko herself, about who she is or maybe what she is. Now she understood. The cattle, who knew only great misfortune and therefore possessed extremely powerful jinxes, easily numbered over 100, including the actual candidates. If they had been carelessly scattered, there was a risk of an all-out war, but there was also a chance that their threat level would fade if they grew obsolete. They could function as a threat precisely because there were so few survivors. As such, they had been called over until there had been a select few left alive.
ヘドが出るな。
繰り返すけど、そこまでしないと、あなたをここまで連れてくることもできなかった。世界の救済を執行する、逸脱者を作り出そうとする試み、救いの牧場計画。その成功例の一つであるあなたは、コンセプト上は、単独で世界を滅ぼすこともできるだけの力を秘めている。その危険性を理解しているなら、あなただって理解できるはずよ。仲間の屍の上に生きる覚悟が必要なことくらいは。
Mitsuji knew everything that she was telling her. Well, everything she was telling her was true. the kind, considerate sheep that was like a sister to her fellow cattle. She, who was once considered such by the pasture, could no longer retain such a convenient position anymore. She knew that. It was just hard to accept. That was all. So, she said it again.
ヘドが出る。藤吉の事件の発端は、どうってことのない話だった。どの団体も、平常の活動としてやってること。隔離された関係性を探して、そこに未知のジンクスが存在しないか調べる。残念なことに、大概は存在する。それで先行して調べたあんたらが、現実改変の痕跡を感じた。それで同系統の能力の俺を連れてきた。
そうね。教会はあなたのことを限定的な現実改変能力者だと考えていたから。
She talked like she didn't have one herself. Misuji wanted to ask her where they'd found a lead on her, but decided to save that for later.
ああ、そう装ってたからな。しかし実際は、本当の能力も被ってたってわけだ。
植松里香子。彼女への尋問の記録には全部目を通したわ。安息の地を地獄めいた夢に求めた土雲2000数百年の怨念。まさかそんなに大きな話だとはね。
俺にはあいつが家畜より安全だとはどうしても思えねえがな。
仕方ないでしょ。今の彼女からは証言されるような強さの魔性が検出されなかったんだから。
They referred to warped humanity that could form the basis of a jinx as a diabolos. That's a word. Diabolicity. Like, I want to say diabolical, which is close. Diabolicity. That's close enough.
今の彼女はちょっとばかりひねくれたクールな知女ってとこかしら。その程度で教会は命を取らないわよ。
まあとにかく幸か不幸か相性は良かった。あいつの現実改変の隙間に俺の能力で干渉できたからな。
何をしたの？
現実が夢に変容する瞬間にあのバカと自分の記憶にアクセスして変容先のあいつと自分の脳みそに突っ込んだ。あとは意識の連続性ってやつ？魂とかそういうのをつなげるとかな。まあこの辺は気休めだけどよ。
なるほど。彼が事件解決に主要な役割を果たす手助けをしたのね。ちなみに彼が居合わせたのは本当に偶然なのね。
ああ、そうでもなきゃ腹切ってでもこの仕事は降りてたろうよ。
本当かしら。なんだかんだであなたは見捨てられないタイプに見えるけど。とにかくたまたまあなたが夢使いでたまたま彼と現地で再会したからうまく事件解決ができたってわけね。
Misuji lazily nodded. And actually, really quick again, I don't think I've really talked about this in the main story, but the fact that Hadawashi obviously knows Misuji, right? What, like, how come this must have been done on purpose, but when he goes in the very beginning of the game, and then anytime we start a new loop at the very beginning, he goes to the market, right? Where Misuji is working. So they never acted as if they knew each other. Did they just pretend? Like, I felt like that, if they knew each other, wouldn't that have been something really odd? It's almost like they were in on this together from the very start, but never mind. The concept of the sheep and the cattle was to bring salvation through dreams. The concept itself wasn't all that new. If they could show all of mankind a blissful dream, they could attain salvation in their minds. Mankind's interests contain complicated self-contradictions. Achieving universal bliss by optimizing everyone's interests was difficult. So there were two easy methods conceived. Either alter people's values and standardize them, or separate them and satisfy them individually. The former was a common idea that had been attempted to be achieved throughout human history via religion, culture, and morals. The latter was an idea that had shown up in sci-fi and such over the past few decades as the development of computer networks progressed. Mitsuji's power was the epitome of the latter. If they could show every human in the world that their own blissful dream, all of mankind would attain bliss. Basically, she could use a power that showed others in a very wide range a specific dream. She could make dreams of all types, and could read others' thoughts and memories through the dream, albeit in an incomplete fashion. That skill and subtlety was her true strength. However, there was another method of using dreams. When dreaming, a dreamer is under the illusion that everything happening is real. No matter how crazy things got inside, it was possible not to realize it was a dream, and as long as they didn't, the dream was endlessly real to its observer. However, there was also Jinx users who could do unrealistic things that could make the observer want to believe it was a dream. Thus, it was possible to alter reality through dreams. The observer could take the reality they didn't want to believe and swap it for one they did. Dream writing, a reality alternation restoration phenomenon that used denial of supernatural phenomenon. It was different from standard reality alteration in that the dream wielder could prepare any reality that desired by merely attaining approval. For example, the reason Mitsuji had been able to prepare the convenience store and all the items Hadawaki had requested was because those were small-scale reality alterations via dreams. She had told the church that her jinx was nothing more than that, an ability that let her create a base and supplies. It was a handy power to possess, but it did have its limits. She couldn't produce unlimited food to ration off forever, and though she could produce lifeboats, it would be difficult to produce a nuclear weapon. Basically, she couldn't attain agreement between a customer and herself to produce anything that definitely couldn't exist in the storage room. Because of this, reality alteration on a small scale was far from perfect, and all sorts of roadblocks had come up regarding implementation. To say nothing of long-range reality alteration. Creating a single dream that everyone affected could agree upon was next to impossible. In the end, it was a case filled with many self-contradictions to the point of nigh impossible as a way to make everyone happy. Therefore, to Jinx users, long-range reality alteration was considered to be, ironically enough, unrealistic, or so it should have been. But this time was different.
植松里香子は夢による現実改変に特化したジンクス使いだった。例えばあいつの心霊治療も、要は夢の中の理想的な自分に現実を近づける能力。それを取り出すために、雲だなんだって回りくどいイメージを使ってるのは、俺から見れば無駄が多いが、しかし、奴の真に恐れるべき能力が、その無駄を難なく解消しちまう。
真に恐れるべき能力？
ああ。あの雲の驚異的な知覚能力、演算能力だよ。1000年単位で無数の先祖の怨念を織り込むという理由付けを与え続けた DD。あれはいわば超強力な精神体コンピュータだ。従来の雲の担い手の夢操作能力を連結して並列で走らせてるようなもんで、その情報処理能力は想像を絶する。もちろん、それでも理想の夢を純粋な計算でひねり出すのは難しい。だから奴は別の方法を考えた。
それが巻き戻りだったの？
ああ。一定の領域、一定の観測者たちのある瞬間の状況を完全に記録する。まるで現実を切り取ったように。
カメラみたいに？
ああ。しかし映像だけじゃない。その世界のその瞬間に起きたことすべてを記録するような途方もない荒技だ。それがあの雲にはできた。それでもって極めて精巧な過去の夢を作り出すこともな。自分が体験してきた過去ならばどんな人間でも同意できる。つまり今日一日頑張ったのは夢だったんだって具合に。
漫画とかでいう夢落ちを強制的に発生させる。
ああ、そういうもんだと思えばいい。ただしそれだってとんでもない話なんだ。今言った通りにな。
それは理解できたわ。つまり彼女をもってしても土雲の復活に足りるだけの糧、あれを都合よく全部回収したぞってな夢を作ることはできなかった。だからあの集落でたまたま文化的に継続していた殺人慣習を利用して自分以外の住人の全滅を狙った。でも彼女はそのために世界すべてを巻き戻してたわけじゃないんでしょ？
その通り。もしそうなったらもっともっと強力なカメラが必要になっただろう。というかまあ
そうよね。あなたの理屈だと
俺や春秋のやつが味わった無数のループは実際は雲の夢の中で発生してたことだ。いわばシミュレーションだな。最初のセーブポイントから全ての登場人物を自由に歩かせて、設定した失敗条件が満たされたら夢を最初からやり直す。
そして最終的にいい結果が出た時だけその夢を現実と差し替える。
そういうことだ。だから実際俺らがループ地獄を味わってる間、時間は1秒も進んじゃいなかった。これもまた雲のべらぼうな演算能力によるものだ。ほんと失敗してよかったと思うぜ。
まったくね。
もう一つ、植松里香子の賢かった点は自分の死を改変発動のトリガーにしたところだな。自分自身も夢の中に没入しなきゃならない以上、その方法が一番だったのは間違いない。
ああ、彼女は確か証言してたわね。土雲の現世の復活には地獄の入り口だというサラナ川や霧のシチュエーションが必須だったって。
ああ、ジンクス成立の背景となすことのデカさを考えれば、そういう面倒な手続きが必要だったのは不思議じゃねえ。しかしそうなると安全な場所で夢を見守ってるわけにはいかないわけだ。殺人現場近くで常に待機する必要がある。失敗しそうな時、能動的にリセットをかける手もあったろうが、もしそれだと不意打ちで死んだ時に対応できねえ。その場合、夢の中とはいえ自分が死んだ夢が現実にフィードバックしないとも限らねえ。この場合はな。それにたとえ現実に戻れたとしても、夢を再開するまでにいくらかは現実の時計の針を進めちまう。あいつ何千だか何万だかループを繰り返してたって話だろ。
本人の証言が正しければ17万6201回らしいわよ。
もし現実世界でリセット手続きを踏むのに1秒かかったとしても、17万回も繰り返せばだいたい2日分ずれちまう。
彼女 儀式発動には丸1日かかったとも証言してたわね。
マジか。毎回それだけの時間かけてたら実時間で400年とか経過するぜ。これはまあ実現不可能だ。だから半ば独立した存在である夢の土雲が自分の生命停止を感知し次第自動で巻き戻るようにした。
それで復活に必要な手続きをするために夢を出る必要はなくなり、ほぼ0時間でリセットをかけられるようになった。その上、自分の死という絶対失敗条件が発生した後は迅速にやり直しが発生する無駄のないスキームが完成した。
そういうことだ。
賢いわね。
いや、確かにその仕掛けはうまくできてたが、奴は賢くないミスを一つしてる。それは巻き戻りの直後からイレギュラーな動きを始める人間を放置したことだ。
芹沢千恵美とあなたの元彼のことね。
あんま元彼言うな。それはともかく、その二人は本来ありえない存在なわけだ。雲によって記憶を現実改変の外側に置き、保持してる自分以外は記憶を持ち越せるはずがないんだ。なのに奴はそれを疑問視しなかったばかりか歓迎さえした。この二人が望む結末を持ってきてくれると。そいつは夢使いの戦い方じゃねえ。夢使いは夢を完全に掌握してこそ優位に立てるんだ。魔王の役回りさ。あいつは春明と千恵美をとっとと夢から追い出すか、毎回振り出しの時点でぶっ殺すべきだったんだ。その上であくまで自力で努力して最良の結果を導き出すべきだった。それをせず、あいつは白馬の王子様を願っちまった。登場人物を入れ替えるだけのために振り出しもいろいろいじった。結局それで春明のやつを呼び込んだんだから世話はねえ。その甘さがなきゃ俺たちが負けてただろうよ。
あなたがそこまで言うならよほどだったのね。
分かってんのかよ。救いの牧場なんかと年季が違う2000年越しの復讐譚だぜ。しかもなんだかんだでジンクスの系統だった知識もねえくせにあそこまで使える能力に育てた血統の所業だ。ここまでのやつはそうそういねえだろうけどよ。にしても冗談じゃねえって言うんだよ。この国には今後どんだけこんなバカみてえな事件が起きるんだ。
まあ私自身はそういうのは3回くらいかな。不幸な人はいるし、そのうちの何割かは危険な力を持って社会に復讐しようとするわけよ。珍しいことじゃないわ。教会で働いてるとそういうのからは逃げられないからね。あなたにも今後せいぜい助けてもらおうと思うわ。
無理無理。俺はせいぜい運び屋と後方支援に徹させてもらうぜ。
表向きはそうした方がいいわね。ただ、あなたのポテンシャルを私は正確に知っておきたい。あなた、解決の直前に相当危ない瞬間があったみたいなこと言ってたわよね。何があったの？教えて。
Mitsuji hesitated. It would be like revealing an ace up her sleeve. Could she really trust this woman?
疑ってるって顔ね。いいわ。もし話してくれるなら、私も自分の能力をあなたに詳しく明かすから。
そりゃいいな。俺もあんたみたくいくつだかわかんねえ美人になれるか？
失礼な子ね。 粧のテクは応用が効くから別途教えてもいいけど、あなた素材は可愛いし。
Normally, Misuji had no interest in her femininity. If pressed, she'd say she wished she'd been born a guy, and her sexual orientation leaned that way to some degree. It was for that reason that her Jinx avatar, the sheep, sounded like a guy.
まあいいや。あんたには話しとく。最悪、死ぬまで悪夢の刑にしてやるし。
そりゃ、ご勘弁願いたいわね。せいぜい漏らさないように注意する。
It was at this point Misuji successfully set a secret trap to seal her superior in a dream she went against her word. What was so terrifying with the sheep was it could do that.
俺が危ない橋を渡ったのは2度だ。最初はあのバカがドジ踏んだ時。
ふむふむ。
まあ簡単に言えば、復活した雲の頭の中に無理やり入り込んで振り出しの写真を盗み見たのさ。植松からすりゃ目的は遂げたわけだから、もうリセットボタンを押す必要はない。だからその時に限っちゃ現実改変は俺の自前でやったんだ。
雲の記憶したその瞬間をあなたが夢として練り上げ、それを現実と差し替えたのね。
そうさ。正確には雲とあのバカの記憶両方元にしたけどな。あいつには確実に記憶を持たせなきゃならなかったから。
To make him agree easily without having him notice the unnatural moment of the swap, she had literally killed Haruaki. Not that she needed to say that, nor did she feel bad about it.
聞く限りでは相当の大技のようだけど、よく植松里香子に気づかれなかったわね。
まあ夢使いはある意味始終妄想してるようなもんだからな。多少の既視感は見過ごすかもと期待はしたさ。あいつにとっちゃ念願が叶って土雲が復活したと思ったら夢だったなんてありそうな話だろ。
それで一旦は納得したと。
だが最後のはかなり無理をした。雲が忘れかけてた最初の方の記憶を俺と春秋の記憶と混ぜて再利用した。結果的に実時間より遡った夢を作り出す羽目になった。雲から見ればバレバレの異常事態だ。
気づかれたと。
ああ。まさか自分と似たような能力者がすぐそばで暗躍してるなんざ思わなかっただろうが、一度気づけばすぐさ。なんせ相手は軍事衛星も真っ青の超感覚と超頭脳だ。いくら俺が羊だっつっても生身の単身でどうこうなるわけでもねえ。それでも2日間くらいは耐えた。その後はアバターをやられてノックダウンさ。
それだけどあなたは能力行使に際してアバターを必要とするのよね。他の家畜もそうなの？
ああ、そういうやつは多い。何しろ牧場と家畜ってコンセプトで動機づけをガキの頃からするんだ。モデルの動物のイメージは鮮明で自分のイメージと強烈に結びついてる方がいい。自然、形になるさ。
となると S 型または G 型。獣のモデルにするならまあ妥当かしら。
学会員みてえなこと言うんだな、あんた。
これでもディアグノーザーの学会資格は持ってるから私。しかしアバターをやられてよく無事だったわね。それ以来能力に支障が残ったりしなかった？
俺らのアバターなりメタモルフォシスなりはそういう能力損傷の危険を経ても魔性の核が傷つかないように作られてる。
なるほど、トカゲの尻尾か。本体の生存を最優先とし、脱出と再決起の瞬間を待つ。マジで世界を救う戦争なんて起こそうとしてたの？
牧場主が何考えてたのかなんて知らねえよ。あんたらか誰かがもうぶっ殺しちまったんだから。ただ末端の家畜やその候補たちはそう信じてたさ。自分たちが世界を救う、救いの巻き場を世界に広げるってな。
ふむ、そっちの話も興味深いけど、まずは報告をどうするかね。
そうだな。
ふむ、わかった。こうしましょう。
は？
状況的に植松里香子の中にも矛盾した気持ちがあったのは間違いない。だからそれが形をとって現れた。その植松里香子の前世みたいなものが房石春明や芹沢千恵美を導いて最終的に土雲を敗北させた。
その場合俺の扱いってどうなるんだよ。
基本すべてのループをコンビニ店員としてぼーっと過ごしたって感じかしら。
ひどすぎんだろ。言えないにしても多少活躍したことにしてくれよ。
あらら、要注意。人間が失敗する原因のベスト3に入るのが功名心よ。目立たないでいいのは幸運と思わなきゃ。
わかったよ。
にしても、あの二人もちょっと注意すべきね。
まあ、そうかもな。
Honestly, in all honesty, Misuji still had feelings for Haruwaki. Her relationship with him had allowed her to exhibit a femininity she never knew that she had. It annoyed and embarrassed her whenever she thought about it, and she never wanted to be in a situation like that again. But when she was with Haruwaki, he'd allowed her to be all that. She dated him with feelings so fresh, she felt like a completely different person. She couldn't deny that for her, who had been living a double life as a spy for the project at the time, their relationship had been very relaxing. Nor could she deny that the 2 years she'd spent talking to him were now part of her life. However, she also knew she wasn't the type to stay tied down. If they kept dating, Haruwaki would have likely realized the truth about her and proceeded to interrogate her non-stop, for that was his nature. He would have certainly been led to the project and the jinxes as a result. And then he would have ruined himself. No doubt about it. His disposition was simply that twisted and antagonistic. Whenever he did an activity he considered scary or interesting, he would always give the person he was facing off against a bad time. It was a nasty, cursed fate, like that of protagonist of a story. If she were just an ordinary woman, that would have been fine. Revealing the secrets of neighbors and internal company affairs didn't always lead to life-threatening danger. But in the extraordinary life that Misuji lived, he would have been erased before long by someone with conflicting interests. And loath as she was to admit it, she didn't want that. Well, the biggest reason she broke up with him was because the war between her desire to kill him and her desire to bask more in their relationship had finally come to a close. The black seed sesame pudding had been the trigger for that, and in the end, she couldn't reach a compromise with the part of her who would curl up in his arms and cry.
が、もう手遅れかもしれねえな。
彼はもう手遅れかもしれないわね。
Misuji was stunned, feeling like her mind had been read. The mug her superior handed over was full of tepid coffee.
何がだよ。
Misuji has long since stopped acting polite for formality's sake around her superior, but she felt this was an appropriate sense of distance.
彼、超常現象に深入りしすぎたでしょ。あなたの正体も半ば知ったわけだし、契約は成立したと思うべきでしょう。今後彼はジンクス使いとして目覚めるかもしれない。
もう目覚めてるかもしれねえぞ。
え？
あるだろ。アーキタイプの中に探偵ってやつが。
あれは超強力な無実化特化能力者か、あるいはジンクス無効化の現実改変者を示すアーキタイプよ。
ああ、知ってるさ。ジンクス的事件をとんでもないへりくつを通すことで現実の事件だったことにしちまう人種。今回は大体そういうことになったわけだろ。
まあ表向きはね。でもあなたがこう証言しているんだから。
でも諸事情あって記録には残らないわけだろ。
ありえなくもないかもね。ちょっと注目した方がいいのかも。ただ私はむしろ芹沢千恵美の方が危ない気がする。あの子の神を殺す力、どう思う？
神が何かによるんじゃね？
そりゃそうだけど、ジンクス的に言えば悪魔的な存在を無条件で知覚して殺せるとかなったらかなりヤバい。
悪魔ね。あいつの言ってた神ってそういう存在でもなさそうだけど。
From a Jinx standpoint, humans who traveled too far down the path of deviancy were called demons. It was a hypothetical concept of a person who'd lost practically all ability to form relationships with humans, to the point where they couldn't even perceive them anymore. However, there were plenty of deviants who alluded to the existence of demons, so they probably existed. It was just hard to prove. On the other hand, the god Haruaki had explained afterward, after the phone, seemed to be a type of concept completely different from Jinx's. It was more like an alien or a real ghost.
そっちは録音テープ聞いたからだいたい理解はしてるつもりだけど、まあ確かにね。人間に知覚されることで活性化、電波、変異する知的存在。どっちかっていうと SF の世界の話みたい。
春秋の定義だと植松の土蜘蛛も神の一種になるみてえだけど、そっちは千恵美には気づけなかったんだろ。土蜘蛛はジンクス的には DD で説明がつくんだ。別物だと考えた方がしっくりくるけどな。
それは植松里香子が神内明神の信仰で隠蔽してたとも考えられるけど、悪魔と神は別物の線が濃厚か。でももしそんな神が実在したとして、これまで世界のどこからも似たような分析が出てこなかったのはなぜかしら。富士吉村は特殊な環境だったけど、あそこにだけ神がいたっていうのも不自然な話に思えるわ。
あんた、こんな話聞いたことあるか？
なになに？エッチな話？
ちげえ！いきなり何言い出してんだ！そんなキャラじゃねえだろ、あんたはよ！
いやー、私くらい逸脱しちゃうと、たまに意識してキャラ崩さないと、行動パターンが確一化されてやばいのよ。
とにかく話ってのは、あれだ。世界に法則を刻んだ人間の話。
何それ？牧場限定の話？
まあ、そうかもしれねえな。ジンクス絡みの話じゃあるから。人間は、逸脱しすぎると悪魔になる。悪魔は契約者以外には見ることさえできない存在だ。しかし、悪魔と契約してるとか嘘吹く連中は大概、ジンクス的にはとんでもない力を持っている。
そういう話もあるわね。
おかしくねえか？ジンクス的には現象発生のために相互理解と契約が必須になるはずだ。知覚できないパワーソースがそんなとんでもない力を与えたら理屈の前提がひっくり返らねえか？
一応ジンクス理論はあくまで他の理論と同様仮説に過ぎないわ。そもそもジンクス的能力の全てが単一の理論で定義できるかも相当怪しい状況なんだから、それは。
この話では逆のことが言われる。悪魔は世界と断絶してるんじゃない。むしろ世界と同化しかけてるんだと。ジンクスは常識を歪める能力だ。それゆえに強靭に結びつけられていて、普通の社会では最初から締め出されてる。しかし強靭じゃない、見えもしない存在が能力を行使すれば、それは嘘やインチキだとはかえって認識されにくい。悪魔はすでに世界に受け入れられかかっていて、そのせいで逆に見えづらくなっている。この考え方でいけば、極まった悪魔はどうなるかっていうと、
世界に法則を刻むって、もしかして。
ああ、そうさ。ジンクスが世界の法則に組み込まれるんだ。そして誰もそれをおかしいと思わなくなる。ちなみに俺は、そうなった悪魔は法になると教わった。例えばニュートンという男が法と化したから、この世界はニュートン力学に支配されたとか。
おお、大胆すぎる説ね。過分にして聞いたことがなかったわ。それだと太古の自然科学者や思想家が何らかの法をもたらしたから現在の世界の秩序があるってことかしら。
その通りだ。それどころかアダムという存在が法と化して有性生殖が生まれたかもしれねえな。
まさに魔法みたいな話ね。
ああ、だからこそ自分たちにはこの世界に幸福という法をもたらす必要がある。
なるほど。テロリストに与えるにはもってこいの壮大で理想じみてて一発逆転主義な筋書きだわ。で、それが今までの話と何の関係があるっていうの？
ああ、状況はもちろん違うんだがよ。ただちょっと嫌な想像をしちまったんだ。ちえみが漠然と知覚してた神について春秋のバカが今回明確な定義づけを行っちまったわけだろ。
待って、嫌な予感が私もしてきた。
もし世界の法則が悪魔にしろ何にしろ後付けで変わっちまうようなものなら、春秋の神の定義がまかり間違って採用されちまって、今後神ってのがそういう形でボコボコ現れるかも。
いや、さすがに飛躍しすぎだから。
確かに春秋は探偵とはちょっと違うかもしれねえ。不可思議の存在を否定してねえからな。むしろ不可思議に対して現実世界と親和性のある説明をひねり出すことで現実化させちまう能力だとしたら。
笑えない。
だろ。ただどうだろうな。そっちはそっちで大変だろうとは思うが、俺らの世界とはあんまり交差しねえかもしれねえ。
そうかしら。ジンクス使いはね、無意味なすれ違いをあまりしないものよ。
だから必ず再会するって？
そうよ。だって私たちは強くなるために自分で世界を狭くすることしかできないもの。現にあなたは破局した後、何の打ち合わせもしないままここで彼と再会し、それが事件解決につながっている。
Yasuji didn't object. She herself had found it unnatural. It could only be explained by a jinx-like interpretation of their relationship.
この先きっとことさら困難なタイミングで彼らと再会するのよ。助けになるか、さらにややこしくなるかはわからないけど。
やめてくれよ。こんな仮説立てるんじゃなかったな。
そんなことはないわ。少なくとも私はあらゆる悪い想像をしておかなきゃならない立場にあるし。超科学理論を現実化するジンクスか。もしそんなアーキタイプがあるとすればどうな。
魔法使い。
言えてみようね。
Tired of talking, the pair both brought the cold coffee to their lips at the exact same time, like mirror images. It was instant. She'd also put sugar in without asking. Not that Misuji was complaining.
とりあえず今聞きたいのはこんなところかしら。あとはそっちでもまとめられるわよね。
ああ。ただ。
何？
植松里香子が土壇場で一切のジンクスを奪われたのは、ありゃどう説明つければいいんだ。ジンクスの喪失はありえない現象じゃないが、そのタイミングで停電を伴って起きたってのは、どう考えても作為的だ。あの場に誰かが介入したとしか思えない。
知ってるでしょ？藤吉村の他の住人は白だったって、バスガイドに偽装したうちの子が言ってた。
一応、逸脱者はいたんだろ？
そうね。牧島春に鴨志田近持。両名ともあの現場にもいたし、神に関する貴重なサンプルなのは疑いないわ。得体の知れない強力なジンクスらしいし、その神が働きかけて雲を消滅させたってのがいい線じゃない？
まあ、それくらいしか考えられねえだろうな。ちなみにその二人、教会はどうするつもりなんだ？
別に、普通の注意すべき一般人と同じ扱いよ。人を差し向けて、遠巻きに監視することになるんじゃないかな。
そんな一筋縄で行きゃいいがな。あの神ってやつが。
ずいぶん、神を危険視してるのね。
一応、俺たちには信仰があるもんでな。神と名の付く者には、敬意と警戒を払いたくなるんだ。
At the very least, his Salvation Pasture project had incorporated concepts and values from Aramaic religions. There was also the reason why all the cattle were born on December 25th. On paper, anyway. To symbolize they were all messiahs in the making.
半神論的な神は、いわゆるヤハウェやアッラーのような唯一神とは、本質的に異なる概念とも聞くわよ。
そんなのはいいんだ。俺たちにとっちゃ、誰がこの世界を作って試練を与えて滅ぼす権限を持ってるのかが重要だ。あんた、計画がどうして立てられたか知ってるか？
終末論的テロリズムによって自分たちの理想郷を作るためと理解しているけど、
完全には否定はしねえ。ただ一方で、牧場主のやつは多分本気で、終末が来ることを確信していた。
だから本気で救世を？
ああ。どんな形の終末が来るのかはわからなかったから、こうして山ほど家畜を養殖したわけだ。
言っとくけど、そういう妄想で事件を起こす奴は、ジンクス社会の外にも中にも山ほどいるからね。
知ってるよ。まあ、俺たちがその例に漏れないただのバカどもだったってことなら、それに越したことはない。あとはあんたら教会やらが世界を守ってくれればいいさ。それが、牧場を襲った狼の責務だ。
狼ね。
Feeling her companion's eyes boring right into her, Misuji sipped her coffee, leaned back in her office chair, and looked up at the ceiling. At the Salvation Pasture Project, Wolf was a code that referred to two things. The first referred to a case where either the project was exposed, or an investigation or attack that could have a great impact on the progression of the project came from the authorities or the academia. When they used the wolf as coming, the cattle and those associated with the project were to quickly escape and go into hiding. Or so they were supposed to. But in the end, they had backfired due to sleeper agents and defectors, and the project was totally destroyed. The DD, not that word again, diabolicity, I don't know why I can't talk, production project, a complete first in history, may have created many with unprecedented powers, but it was lacking in intelligence. The other was a mere legend whispered only amongst the cattle, of a cattle who specialized in killing cattle. That, or was a plan to deal with cattle capable of destroying a world who had already been released into it. Whatever the case, it was a world that symbolized fear and hostility to the cattle. In other words, Fenrir, the world-killing wolf. Thank you, God of War, for delving me a little bit more into Norse mythology. And here's hoping whenever Ragnarok comes out, I'll really enjoy it. Anyway, however, according to all the Central Intelligence Misuji had come into contact with working as an intelligence officer for the project, no such thing existed. She would have had no way of finding such information if it only existed in the brains of a select few of the top brass, including the ranchers, but it didn't seem likely to her. That said, an apparent like Misuji didn't think it was impossible for there to be an apparent Jinx user like that. If there were such a user, she'd probably come across them eventually due to the bond linking Jinx users, and if she did, all she could do was fight to the best of her ability. When she thought that, an idea suddenly came to Misuji. It was a trifling idea. No, a memory.
なあ、事件当時の藤吉村の住人、および救出時にいた人間のリスト持ってるか？
そりゃ。っていうか、報告書にまとめるようで、まとめてメールしたじゃない。
そうだっけか。あ、ほんとだ。
いきなりどうしたの？
The recollection immediately became an unpleasant conviction.
足りない。
え？
藤吉村の現住人が11人。うち老人1名が死亡。外部からの取材者2名。ここに犠牲者である千恵美が加わって14人。さらに春秋のバカを加えたら15人。あいつの話では、読み意味の宴の最大人数は16人だったはず。
まずい見落としね。リストから欠けてるのは誰？
わからねえ。だが、俺はアバターを通して見たことがある。4歳くらいの女のガキだった。
子供？そんな住人いないわよ。
じゃあ外から入り込んだんだ。
そんな子供が？一人で？一体どんな事情？
The woman's words trailed off as the same reason Mitsuji.
なあ、ジンクス的因縁によって人と人が都合よく出会うことってあんたの実感としてはよくあることか？
ええ、ひどくよくあることね。
牧場から逃げたうち4歳くらいのガキはいなかったか？
あなたに伝えることには。
俺は逃亡者だ。今さら戻ろうなんて思わねえ。それにリグループは牧羊犬の仕事だ。知ってるだろ？
Mitsuji had already gone over what the project's plan was if the wolf came, to suspend it and flee. In those situations, everyone was supposed to scatter in different random directions. After all, if an escape plan had existed, the fugitives would all be rounded up if they ever leaked. In preparation for the arrival of the wolf, a jinx user was designed for the purpose of regathering the cattle. That was the sheepdog. The sheepdog was a cattle kept under a heavy veil of secrecy, and Misuji had never met them. But in the end, they'd been caught and were now collaborating with the academia. So this meticulous plan had grown moot. Misuji couldn't blame the sheepdog. After all, she had also thought of selling her comrades to keep herself safe. However, even though she was now hiding right under the church's noses to stay hidden, she feared the sheepdog would find her one day. But that was another story.
絶対に言わない約束よ。破ったらあなた、顔がなくなるからね。
上等だ。
It was a contract. Misuji knew that the superior was a considerably skilled jinx user. Thus, she would assume the restrictions had already come into effect. It was like they had each other at gunpoint. Misuji gulped, smiled, and steeled herself once more.
脱出組の家畜は確認されているだけで34名。そのうち成功例が7名で、あなたもこれに含まれる。加えて、学会の襲撃のギリギリ前に若干名の子供が施設から連れ出されてると、わずかな証言から推測されている。
The pastor had predicted the attack? Which meant that the children they'd put priority on setting free behind closed doors were
理想例の可能性があるガキか。
Amongst all the kids impounded by the project, only those who showed signs of jinxes were called cattle. They were 3 types of cattle: successes, failures, and ideals. Due to the abnormal education the children raised in the Salvation Pasture received, there was a high chance of them displaying a DD and obtaining a jinx. But that didn't mean they'd always get the jinx they'd been aiming for. Those who obtained jinxes that followed their concepts, those that possessed the specs and ability to achieve worldwide salvation, were called successes. Those who developed jinxes that either went against their concepts or clearly didn't match up to the level of the concepts they'd been aiming for were called failures. From what Misuji knew, there were about a dozen successes, including herself, while there were supposedly many times more failures. But even the failures had abilities that could prove useful for some project or another, so they were kept in the confines of the pasture's facility. Most of them were ignorant detainees who had supposedly seen the end of the project in the recent attack of the academia. Mitsuji had heard that after that, they were all executed alongside of children who hadn't shown signs of jinxes. This inhumane and unprecedented measure had become well known in their world and sparked massive debate. But that was besides the point. Though they were called successes, that didn't necessarily mean they were successes for the overall project. For example, the concept of the sheep was to bring salvation through dreams, but it was clear that didn't necessarily mean perfect salvation. It was merely something like euthanasia, internally delaying the moment the physical world ended in a subjective world and immersing it in a blissful dream was not true salvation. In fact, all the current successes could only bring about dystopian salvation such as that. Salvation meant as a stopgate measures gathered to prepare for the gathering. Oh my god, let me reread that sentence entirely. Salvation meant as stopgate measures gathered to prepare for the coming end of the world. The successes were stopgate measures with a high success rate, but a low salvation rate. Conversely, the Salvation Pastoral Project had also been undertaking the creation of DD even more complicated and delicate, yet capable of attaining true salvation. Those were ideals. As they were wrapped up in such a secrecy as the sheepdog, Mitsuji barely knew a thing about them.
わからないわ。その子たちについては、 計画自体のざるっぷりからは考えられないほど情報統制が効いている。しかしきっと恐ろしく重要な子供たち、他をすべて投げ打っても計画のために逃がしたかった子たちでしょうから。脱出組狩りが一段落したら牧羊犬はその子たちを探すことになるでしょうね。
なるほど。それまで逃げ延びられれば俺は一安心ってわけだな。しかしあのガキが理想例だとしたら、その一緒に逃げた世話係とはぐれたってことか？
Was there even such a person? If they were treating her so carefully, her helper could have been plenty talented in their own right. Like a skilled failure cattle or something. Would someone like that really do something like leave a child in the middle of the mountains like it were nothing? And more than anything, Mitsuji had a question. The girl she'd seen for just a moment in that gray dream that became reality didn't look the least bit like a powerful ideal. Special jinxes were linked to special diabolicies. So shouldn't ideals be kids who were clearly abnormal? The idyllic girl only looked like a failure at best. And sure enough, Mitsuji's power superior was regarding her pensively, as if she had the other answer.
今から言うことは、私が独自ルートで知るに至った情報。今の段階で絶対に出回るはずのない情報。
もったいつけるなよ。ここまでクリア漏らすわけねえだろ。
4月に失敗例の家畜が一人、学会の拘束を振り切って逃走した。それはちょうど4歳くらいの子供だったらしいわ。名前は確か黒ヤギ。
聞いたことがある。体内回帰による救済の失敗例。致命的な容量不足がどうとかって。しかし待てよ、皆殺しじゃなかったのか？その上あの連中がガキ一匹にやられたってのか？
どうやら学会側ではデータ採集のため名簿をごまかして居残り組たちを囲ってたらしい。調べた後殺すつもりで。だけど黒ヤギは想定以上に危険な存在だったみたいね。
しかし
学会行為の研究者が数名全身をバラバラにされて殺されてる。
マジか。
おそらくは本人に比してかなり強力なアバターを持ってる。その上、くそ、なぜ気づかなかったのかしら。生き残った連中の中には精神をやられジンクスを喪失した者もいたようよ。これってまさに
決まりじゃねえかよ。
That jinx was a concept based on a myth of a black goat of darkness, from some mythology that devoured and rebirthed all in creation. That girl, who had been declared a failure due to her limited stomach capacity, probably possessed another perfect ability. In other words, that black goat was...
黒ヤギは魔性を食ったんだ。
She'd eaten them of all those present when she's escaped the academia. And after she slipped into Fujiyoshi, she'd gone on the run again and devoured Rikaku Imatsu's diabolicy.
幸か不幸かわからないわね。羊と黒ヤギがニアミスしてたって事実は。
ああ、そうだな。
What would Mitsuji have done if she recognized her as the Black Goat? Would she have abandoned her mission to the church and helping the people of Fujiyoshi to take her and flee? Or would she have presented her to the church for self-protection, offering cheap compassion along the way? Well, that was a pointless supposition.
ジンクス使い同士は無意味なすれ違いはしないんだよな。
ええ、無意味じゃなかったのでしょうね。
つまり黒ヤギが逃げおおせるのは必然だったってのか。
さあわからない。運命論は私も嫌い。ただ簡単に捕まってしまわなかったということは嫌な予感はしちゃうわね。
The black goat was still on the run, all while concealing an exceedingly powerful jinx in her diabolicy. The problem was that it couldn't save the world. If she kept concealing it as she grew up, perhaps it would become a threat that could rival that of the imaginary wolf.
さあな。
Masuji didn't know. To a cattle and fugitive like her, she didn't know if a monstrous entity born into this world like that was a bad thing. Mitsuji Misamine, through her activities in the outside world and meeting with Haruaki Fusashi, knew that the project was inhumane and abominable. They even called the innocent children they turned to monsters for the sake of the project cattle. That girl, who had been born with a heavy burden to bear and had been abandoned by her fellow cattle like Misamine and a sheepdog, was unmistakably miserable. Didn't she have the right to take revenge on the world? And wouldn't Mitsuji herself be condemned by an entity like that girl for running away without lending a helping hand? Wisely, the adult in Mitsuji avoided answering those questions and pushed them aside.
黒ヤギのことはここだけの秘密ね。でないとあなたの正体がバレるし、上役である私の責任追及も免れない。
だな。何せリストの見落としで最重要危険人物を取り逃がしたんだ。
あなたのせいでもあるでしょ。
ああ、そうだ。もしかしたら知ってて逃がしたかもしれねえぜ。
もしそうならあなたはもっと動揺してるわよ、羊さん。生きがってるけど本来は小心で純朴でしょ、あなた。
うるせえな。
黒ヤギか。その子にも会ってみたいわね。
会えるんじゃねえのか。ここまで深入りしちまったんだからよ。
The bond between jinxes would likely bring them together eventually.
今後ともよろしく。
ああ。
Her superior now gone, Mitsuji turned back to the PC screen. She deleted the threatening walls of text she'd written, and quickly began typing the fake story she'd been ordered to type up. This kind of report didn't matter anymore. To Mitsuji, the incident had only just begun. She was sure of that. End. P.S. 6 years later, violent and terrifying criminals known as the Black Goat Septuplets became well known in the world of superpowers. After this, the church successfully made contact with the Black Goat behind closed doors, and the power dynamics in the world of superpowers shifted even further. PPS. 4 years after that, the following conversation occurred in a corner of a provincial city. Is everything in order? Yeah, but for someone who used to be your ally, you sure did take care of them pretty easily. I don't see her feel the need to draw the line between enemies and allies at the scene of a murder. It dulls you and is more trouble than it's worth. Huh. What an annoying way to put it. In any case, I'm grateful. Thanks. Though I'd say Michan and the others deserve the most credit. Anyway, you should go to your sister's place. I have no choice. I'll have to stay out of school for a little while. Roger, leave the printouts and notes to me. Are you okay with that? I'm asking if you're okay not going after him alongside the others. Well, we should let the two who went forward back then take lead now, don't you think? Not that any of that matters. How annoying. Oh well, it's fine. I prefer those who are more mature, composed, and craftier myself. Well, you got the last one at least. Yeah, I guess. Just how many were tricked this time again? And it sounds like you have a specific person in mind who matches that criteria. Fusayuki-san. That's a weird name. Forget it. You're not even interested, right? Yeah. How annoying. Later then. Later. Of course, this conversation wasn't written in any of the church's records. It would be a little while after this that the black goat and sheep would meet again. Really? Are you gonna end it just like that? Wow. Okay. That... I don't even know what the hell to say. Okay, first off, at least for me, in terms of, like, wrapping things up and, like, pushing forward the story more, that was probably the best extra story we had. It's interesting to see it, frankly. I mean, I liked the revelations and, like, the plot twists where the supernatural aspects of the feast were all proven to be man-made. Yet, even with all that going on, we still have all this supernatural stuff still happening. The whole thing with the church, this pasture project, the jinxes, and holy crap. Like, I feel like they should really... I mean, I understand it's the mystery behind it, but if they were to develop another game... I hate calling it Raging Loop 2, but maybe a continuation of this outside of looping aspect or spin-off, whatever, regarding this story, I think would be fantastic. Now, to my knowledge, I don't think there's anything like that in the works, considering that, well, this game originally released in 2015, which I assume then it was written, like, in 2013, 2014, maybe even earlier. Considering we're about to head into 2022, if not already are in 2022, depending on when this video comes out, yeah, there's been no word of anything else. But it makes me wonder, like, did they put all that in the sense of, like, hey, it's open to interpretation, you know? Let your mind go wild. Or are they really trying to set up a sequel or something of sorts? It basically confirmed that Miko-chan, is the black goat who devours these... if I'm understood correctly, they devour the powers or whatever from these jinxes, kind of like what happened to Rikako. Because we never found out how her powers were just gone. She was about to reset everything by killing herself, and then bloop, just all went away. But then I'm confused, like, so... It was like 4 years later, and then 6 years... No, it was like 6 years later, and then 4 years after that. So basically 10 years after everything. Apparently, the children that escaped... They call these the Black Goat Septuplet murders? I mean, I understand they mentioned, like, don't they deserve to take revenge on the world and all that for what they went through. But... would they actually go after Fusashi and Chimi or anyone else? I don't know. It definitely opens up a lot of questions and discussions and all that, and that's amazing. I like that. I would like to see, like, official word and confirmation, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Now, besides that, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to be it for me regarding this particular Let's Play. I mentioned it numerous times already, but I'll say it again. I just don't have any plans to go over Revelation mode, just because it's a lot, in my opinion, you know? Yeah, I can skip through everything and just show the new scenes, but... frankly, I think I'm just a little done, or like, you know, I'm pooped from everything this game has shown to me. So I think, once again, it's a definitely good incentive for those who are interested in the game to pick it up for yourselves, show support for the developers and the publishers and all that, and experience it for yourself. And it might be something I'll just play for my own sake down the line, you know? But as of right now, and for this Let's Play, this has been it. It's been a hell of a ride. It's been super interesting. I am super happy that I went through it. You know what's funny? An article was just published. I forgot what site regarding this game, talking about how it was just like really overlooked. And I'm like, I wonder why there's a resurgence apparently of this game, because I highly doubt I had anything to do with it. But frankly, I mean, I'm glad to see more recognition for these types of games that are definitely not going to be well known to a lot of gamers, like outside of like hardcore gamers, but just general gamers. Period. I hate differentiating, but I'm just saying like something that's niche as this, I doubt a lot of people are going to know about. So I'm happy to bring that further if I can, and frankly, because I was told about this game from another user, if I'm not mistaken, so I kept it in mind until I saw it available, and well, here we are. And I'm super happy that I went through it, and I'll definitely be on the lookout for more games like this. I'm always a sucker for those murder mystery types of games. I'd like to have more gameplay though, so I really wouldn't expect more of... I don't know. I do have a couple other visual novels in mind that I really want to play, so I don't know. I just like doing things in my visual novels, if that makes sense. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to thank you all once again for watching my Let's Play of Raging Loop. Love you all so much, and stay tuned for whatever the hell I plan to LP next. Have a great day.